Beneath the still surface of a lake lies a world of lost history. We are embarking on a global journey to explore 25 of the most enigmatic and sacred lakes from ancient times. By the end, you will possess a new understanding of how our ancestors saw the world through waters that hid cities, monsters, and cosmic secrets. What caused an entire metropolis to vanish beneath the waves, and why would a civilization build a temple only to let it drown? We will find answers in sunken streets and in legends carved from stone. Each of these lakes is a puzzle, a piece of a much larger story about faith, fear, and the human drive to explain the unexplainable. What do you believe is waiting to be discovered in the world's deepest waters? Our journey starts where the water is clearest, in the gentle shallows of the Mediterranean Sea. Here, off the southern coast of Greece, the past does not lie buried in dark silt but sleeps under a sunlit veil of turquoise. This is Pavlopetri, a name that means Paul's stone, but it is not a single stone. It is an entire city resting on the seabed for more than 5,000 years. That makes it the oldest known submerged city in the world, a ghost from the Bronze Age that you can literally swim over. Its foundations are not hidden in deep, murky water. They sit just a few meters down, so the outlines of streets, the walls of homes, and the courtyards of public buildings are visible from the surface on a calm day. It is an eerily complete snapshot of a sophisticated society, frozen at the moment it was swallowed by the sea. This urban plan, with its organized roads and distinct neighborhoods, predates the legend of Atlantis by millennia. It proves that complex city life and maritime trade flourished here long before the great classical civilizations of Greece rose to power. So what happened to Pavlopetri? Why is a bustling port city now a silent garden for fish and seaweed? The leading theory points to the very ground the city was built upon. This region is seismically active, a land of earthquakes. It is possible that a series of powerful tremors caused the land to sink, a process known as subsidence. The earth simply dropped and the sea rushed in to claim the streets. Another possibility combines this with the slow, relentless rise of global sea levels since the last ice age. Perhaps a sudden disaster delivered the final blow to a city already struggling against the creeping tide. The incredible work of underwater archaeologists has given this mystery its shape. Using tools like photogrammetry, which stitches thousands of photographs into a precise three-dimensional map, researchers have plotted every surviving wall and pathway. They have revealed a city designed with intention, with a central street, residential quarters, and what appear to be religious structures. They have even identified tombs, suggesting the city's inhabitants lived and died here for generations. This mapped grid of stone is not a haphazard collection of ruins. It is a blueprint of early urban life, challenging old assumptions and whispering secrets about how our ancestors first came together to build a community, only to have the very world shift beneath their feet. But the story of a city claimed by the sea is a slow geological tragedy. Our next mystery is far more immediate, a creature of shadow and sudden movement. From the sunken, silent streets of Pavlopetri, we travel north to a place where the water holds no ruins, only rumors. Loch Ness is a slash of darkness in the Scottish Highlands, a lake so deep and cold and filled with peat that light seems to vanish within it. This is not a sacred site of ancient gods, but it has become a temple of modern wonder, a place where the line between myth and possibility blurs with every ripple on its inky surface. The legend of its monster is woven into the very fabric of the location. The first written account comes not from a tabloid but from a saint. In the year 565, the biography of Saint Columba describes him confronting a water beast in the river Ness, which flows from the loch, and commanding it to retreat in the name of God. For centuries, the story persisted in local folklore, a whispered tale of something large and unknown in the depths. Then, in the spring of 1933, everything changed. A new road was built along the loch's western shore, offering clear, unobstructed views of the water for the first time. That same year, a couple reported seeing an enormous creature, like a dragon or prehistoric animal, cross the road and slide into the loch. The story was picked up by the Inverness Courier, which used the term monster, and a modern legend was born. The most famous piece of evidence arrived the following year. It is known as the surgeon's photograph, a grainy black and white image that appears to show a small head and long neck rising from the lake's calm surface. Published in the Daily Mail, it was presented as proof from a respected London doctor. For decades, this image was the cornerstone of the Nessie phenomenon. It fueled expeditions, books, and countless tourist journeys. The mystery seemed captured on film. Then, in 1994, the story took another dramatic turn. The surgeon's photograph was revealed to be a hoax, a model attached to a toy submarine. The doctor was not the photographer, but part of a scheme to discredit a newspaper reporter. Yet, even with its most iconic proof debunked, the fascination did not die. If anything, it evolved. Science took up the hunt. Multiple sonar surveys have swept the loch's profound depths, some returning with intriguing, unidentifiable contact. One expedition in the 1970s captured a sonar image of a large, moving object they called a flipper. Others have found nothing conclusive. Photographs and videos continue to surface, each one analyzed and debated. So what could explain 1,000 years of sightings? The theories are as varied as the reports. One persistent idea is a surviving population of plesiosaurs, air-breathing marine reptiles from the age of dinosaurs, trapped in the loch since prehistoric times. The shape described by many witnesses matches this image perfectly, but biologists point out the loch is too nutrient-poor to support a breeding population of large predators, and a plesios would need to surface far more often than sightings suggest. A more plausible, yet still extraordinary, explanation points to giant eels. European eels are known to migrate through the area, and a rare, abnormally large specimen could account for the humped back and serpentine motion many people describe. Other suggestions include swimming deer, floating logs, or unusual wave patterns created by the loch's steep sides and deep water. Yet the mystery endures because Loch Ness offers the perfect ingredients. Its water is the color of strong tea stained by peat, making any object within it vague and shapeless. It is incredibly deep, over 700 feet in places, with caverns and trenches that have never been fully explored. This combination of obscurity and immensity creates a blank canvas for the human imagination. We want there to be a monster. The legend transforms a cold, deep lake into a place of sacred possibility, a reminder that the world can still hold secrets too large for our maps. The deep, dark waters of Loch Ness invite speculation about what might lurk unseen. But high in the thin air of the Andes, a lake holds a different kind of marvel, one built by human hands in plain sight. Lake Titicaca, straddling the border of Peru and Bolivia, is a body of water that defies expectation. It sits over 12,000 feet above sea level, making it the highest navigable lake in the world. Here, the sky feels immense, and the water is a brilliant, piercing blue. This is not a place of hidden monsters, but of floating worlds. For centuries, the Euros people have lived on the lake's surface, not along its shores, on islands they weave from the lake itself. These are the famous floating islands of Titicaca, each one a testament to human ingenuity. The islands are constructed from the dense, buoyant roots of the totora reed, which grows in great beds throughout the lake. The Euros cut large blocks of these root mats, layer them together, and anchor them to the lakebed with ropes and stakes. On top of this floating foundation, they build their homes, also from bundled reeds, and even their boats. The material is constantly decaying, so maintenance is a daily part of life. New layers of reeds must be added to the top every few weeks, a never-ending cycle of creation and renewal. This entire way of life, a civilization literally afloat, began as a strategy for survival. Long ago, the Euros likely took to the water to escape more powerful land-based empires, finding safety and independence on the movable islands. Their existence is a physical mystery, a question of how a culture can persist for so long on such a fragile, handmade foundation. But the human story of Titicaca goes back far beyond the Euros. For the Inca, this lake was not just a resource, it was the sacred origin of everything. Their mythology tells that the sun god, Inti, emerged from the depths of Lake Titicaca. He then created the first Inca, Manco Capac, and his sister wife Mama Oclo on the Isla del Sol, the island of the sun, and sent them forth to found the city of Cusco and civilize the world. To the Inca, this was not a metaphor, it was historical and spiritual truth. The lake was a birthplace, a portal from which divine order entered the world. This profound reverence made Titicaca one of the most important ceremonial centers in the Andes. Modern archaeology has confirmed this sacred status, revealing that the lake's significance predates the Inca by more than 1,000 years. Underwater explorations have uncovered astonishing evidence of ritual offerings. Divers have found submerged stone boxes called coches containing miniature figurines made of shell and stone, along with burned offerings of llama fat and other precious materials. These were likely gifts to the lake gods, placed carefully into the water from ceremonial reed boats. Even more striking are the discoveries of what appear to be submerged temples or ceremonial structures near the island of Koa. These findings paint a picture of a landscape where the boundary between land and water was spiritually porous. The lake was not a barrier but a gateway. Offerings were sent into it, temples were built facing it, and entire origin myths sprang from it. The floating islands of the Euros, then, are part of a much older tradition, a continuing human dialogue with a lake that was never seen as merely water. It was, and for many still is, a living ancestor, a divine womb, and a home that can be woven from reeds and faith. Gold offered to the gods is a story told in many sacred waters, but in one Colombian lake, that story became a legend powerful enough to drive men mad. High in the Andes north of Bogotá lies Lake Guatavita, a near-perfect circle of dark water cradled in the crater of an ancient volcano. To the Muisca people, this was not just a lake, it was the center of the universe, the home of the gods, and the stage for a ceremony so dazzling it would echo through history for centuries. When a new ruler, the Zipa, ascended to power, his initiation was an act of breathtaking spectacle. Covered from head to toe in fine gold dust, he would stand on a raft piled high with gold and emeralds. As the raft was pushed to the center of the lake, the new king, a living sun god shimmering in the light, would dive into the cold, dark water, washing the gold from his body as an offering. His attendants would then throw the treasure on the raft into the depths. This was the origin of El Dorado, not a city of gold, but a man of gold. The Spanish conquistadors heard fragments of this ritual, and their imaginations did the rest, spinning it into a myth of an entire kingdom paved with precious metal. That myth turned Lake Guatavita into a target. For hundreds of years, treasure hunters became obsessed with draining the lake to reach its legendary floor. The first major attempt came in the 16th century, when Spanish merchants cut a notch in the crater rim to lower the water level. They recovered a few hundred pieces of gold, but the tunnel collapsed, killing many workers. The most infamous effort began in the late 19th century. A British company, using massive pumps and engineering, succeeded in lowering the lake by over 60 feet, exposing a layer of mud that baked solid in the sun. They found a handful of artifacts, a gold mask and some ceremonial pieces now in the British Museum, but the legendary hoard remained elusive. The operation was a financial disaster and an ecological one, leaving a deep scar on the crater wall that is still visible today. These brutal intrusions damaged the site but proved one thing: the ritual was real. The gold was there, but the lake, it seemed, was guarding its secrets. Among the scattered finds from these dredgings, a different, more enigmatic artifact entered the story. Some accounts speak of a crystal skull, a perfectly carved quartz object said to have been recovered from the lake's mud. This claim ties Lake Guatavita to one of archaeology's most controversial puzzles. Crystal skulls are most famously linked to Mesoamerican cultures like the Aztec and Maya, with the most famous examples housed in museums in London and Paris. They are masterpieces of carving, their origins shrouded in mystery and modern forgery. The idea that one could be found in the highlands of Colombia, far from the known centers of such craftsmanship, is explosive. It sparks a debate that cuts to the heart of pre-Columbian history. Could there have been contact, trade, or shared knowledge between the cultures of Mexico and those of the Colombian Andes? Mainstream archaeology is deeply skeptical, pointing out that no crystal skull has ever been found in a documented scientific excavation in Colombia. The known skulls have been traced through murky antiquities markets, and modern analysis suggests some were likely carved in the 19th century with European tools. Yet the legend persists, fueled by the innate mystery of the object itself and the sacred power of its purported source. Whether the skull is a genuine ancient artifact, a later offering, or a complete fiction, its connection to Lake Guatavita is telling. It shows how this place attracts stories of the supernatural and the unexplained. The lake is more than a repository of gold, it is a symbol. It represents unattainable wealth, certainly, the treasure that is always just out of reach. But on a deeper level, it symbolizes spiritual power that cannot be drained or pumped away. The Muisca were not merely discarding wealth, they were engaging in a profound exchange, trading earthly gold for divine favor and the right to rule. Every failed attempt to loot the lake reinforces this idea that some things are meant to stay in the realm of the sacred, lying in the dark water, reminding us that not all value can be weighed on a scale. The legend of El Dorado is a story of gold offered to the gods, but some offerings are made of something far more permanent. In the cold, fresh depths of Lake Michigan, a different kind of treasure lies forgotten. It is not gold but stone, and its arrangement suggests a mind at work. While surveying the lakebed for shipwrecks, archaeologists using side-scan sonar made a baffling discovery. About 40 feet below the surface, near the Grand Traverse Bay area, their instruments painted a picture not of a broken hull, but of a series of large stones. These stones were not scattered randomly. The sonar images showed them placed in a logical, deliberate pattern, forming a rough circle nearly 40 feet across. Among the stones, one seemed to bear a crude carving, the likeness of a mastodon, an Ice Age creature that vanished from North America over 10,000 years ago. The discovery sent a ripple through the archaeological community. Here was a structure reminiscent of ancient stone circles found in Europe, resting on the bottom of one of the world's largest freshwater lakes. The immediate question was obvious. How did it get there? The most compelling theory connects the stones to a time when this was not a lakebed at all. At the end of the last ice age, as the massive glaciers retreated, the water levels of the Great Lakes were significantly lower. The area where the stones now lie submerged would have been dry land, a shoreline, or perhaps even an inland plain, populated by creatures like the mastodon. In this context, the structure makes a different kind of sense. Some researchers propose it was a hunting blind, a man-made structure used by Paleo-Indian hunters to corral or ambush game. The stones could have supported wooden posts or served as anchors for hides, creating a concealed vantage point. The carved mastodon stone, if genuine, might have served as a spiritual totem for a successful hunt. This explanation fits the timeline and the environment, yet it opens a profound mystery of its own. If this interpretation is correct, it means evidence of sophisticated human activity in the Great Lakes region is far older than many conventional models suggest. It hints at an ancient culture with the organization and purpose to move multi-ton stones and arrange them with intent, a chapter of North American prehistory that is currently missing from our textbooks. Of course, such a bold claim invites intense scrutiny and debate. The greatest challenge is the site itself. Investigating a stone circle under 40 feet of cold, often murky, fresh water is exponentially more difficult than excavating on land. Strong currents, limited visibility, and the sheer logistical cost of underwater archaeology mean that definitive study has been slow. The initial sonar images are tantalizing, but they are just shadows on a screen. To confirm the mastodon carving, scientists would need to physically inspect and meticulously document the stone, a process that requires perfect conditions. Skeptics point out that natural glacial movement, which littered the region with countless boulders, could arrange stones in seemingly patterned ways by pure chance. The alleged carving could be the result of natural weathering or even modern interference. The debate continues precisely because the site holds such potential significance. Is it a rare, preserved snapshot of Ice Age hunters, a North American Stonehenge lying in silent, cold storage? Or is it a fascinating geological quirk, a trick of the sonar and the human mind's desire to find patterns? Until a full-scale archaeological expedition can thoroughly examine the site, the stone circle remains a ghost in the machine, a mysterious contour on a map that challenges our understanding of who walked this land when the lakes were young. A lake that chooses to hide a city is an active participant in the story. In the forests of Western Russia, Lake Svetloyar is not a passive body of water, it is a guardian. Its name means light or holy, and its surface is a perfect, still oval, mirroring the sky with an almost supernatural clarity. For centuries, pilgrims have traveled here not to look for treasure, but to listen. The legend they carry says that in the 13th century, as the Mongol horde of Batu Khan swept across Russia, a city named Kaitaj stood in their path. Rather than see it defiled, the story goes, God answered the prayers of its righteous citizens. As the invaders approached, the entire city, with its golden domed churches and pious people, was swallowed by the earth, and the waters of Lake Svetloyar rose to cover it, creating a divine shield. Kaitaj did not fall, it simply became invisible, a spiritual fortress protected by the lake itself. The faithful believe that on quiet mornings you can still hear the faint, ghostly ringing of its church bells from the depths, and that the purest of heart might even glimpse the shimmering outlines of its cathedral towers beneath the waves. This is the Russian Atlantis, but with a crucial difference: its submersion was not a tragedy, but a miracle of preservation. The lake's waters are consequently considered sacred and miraculously healing. For generations, people have bathed in them or collected them to cure ailments, believing them imbued with the holiness of the sunken city. This transforms Svetloyar from a historical site into a living pilgrimage destination, a place where faith is reinforced by the sensory experience of the landscape, the taste of the water, and the silence broken only by birdsong or perhaps by the echo of bells. Science, however, offers a different origin story for the lake's perfect bowl-like shape. Geological surveys suggest Svetloyar may sit within a meteorite impact crater. The structure's dimensions and the shocked rock beneath it align with this cosmic explanation. A cataclysm from the heavens millions of years ago could have carved this precise depression, which later filled with water. This does not disprove the legend of Kaitaj. Instead, it adds a profound new layer. Imagine the narrative logic at work: ancient people encountering this strikingly round, deep, and clear lake in the forest. Its unusual form demanded an explanation. A folk memory of a violent, earth-shattering event, perhaps an actual historical battle or disaster, could have over centuries fused with the physical reality of the crater, birthing the tale of a city swallowed whole. The meteorite theory provides the stage, and human faith provides the drama. This is the true power of Lake Svetloyar. It exists at the intersection of measurable geology and immeasurable belief. The scientific explanation for its shape makes the legend feel more grounded, not less. It shows how a remarkable natural feature can become a canvas for a culture's deepest hopes, for the idea that purity can be protected, that faith can literally create a sanctuary, and that some mysteries are not meant to be solved, only revered. The idea of a lake as a living, breathing entity moves from legend into startling reality in the heart of Slovenia. Titicaca Lake does not simply exist, it performs. It is the largest intermittent lake in Europe, a vast expanse of water that can cover 75 square kilometers in the spring, transforming the landscape into an inland sea, only to vanish completely by late summer, leaving behind a lush, grassy plain where people play soccer and graze cattle. This is not magic, though it feels like it. It is the work of an invisible, watery clockwork deep underground. The region is built on karst, a porous limestone landscape riddled with caves, sinkholes, and subterranean rivers. The lake sits in a geological bowl called a pulge. When autumn rains and spring snowmelt pour into the basin, the underground channels cannot drain the water fast enough, and the pulge fills like a giant bathtub. As the seasons turn and inflow slows, the same siphon-like caves swallow the water back into the earth, draining the lake away. This cyclical disappearance and rebirth made the lake profoundly sacred to ancient peoples. How could they see it as anything but supernatural? A powerful, life-giving expanse of water would simply retreat into the ground as if pulled by some unseen force. It behaved with a will of its own. This led to the compelling belief that the lake was a direct gateway to the underworld, a place where the realm of the living and the realm of spirits met and mingled with the turning of the year. Such a potent place naturally bred stories to explain its moods. Local folklore speaks of water spirits and, most famously, a dragon said to live in the caves beneath. When the dragon drinks, the lake vanishes. When it sleeps or ceases, the lake returns. This myth personifies the unpredictable hydrology perfectly, giving a face and a motive to the incomprehensible. Yet this vanishing act creates more than stories. It fosters a unique and resilient ecosystem. The periodic flooding deposits rich sediments, creating exceptionally fertile soil when the water recedes. The transient wetlands become a crucial stopover for migratory birds, and specialized plants and animals have adapted to the rhythmic cycle of inundation and drought. The lake is not dead when it is absent, it is merely waiting, its life cycles ticking away in seeds and eggs buried in the mud. To stand on the Titicaca plain in August, with the wind blowing through tall grass where fish swam months before, is to feel the earth itself breathing. It is a mystery not of what is hidden, but of what is transient, a reminder that the most sacred places might be those that refuse to stay still. The rhythmic breath of a lake teaches us that water is a keeper of time. And at Lake Titicaca, that time was measured not just in seasons, but in the precise movements of the stars. While we've seen its floating islands and sacred offerings, this immense blue mirror in the sky held another profound secret. It was likely a grand, open-air observatory where ancient civilizations built their temples to align with the cosmos. The evidence is etched into the very stones of its islands. On the Isla del Sol, the legendary birthplace of the Inca sun god, structures and carved rocks are positioned with deliberate intent. Certain walls and sightlines point directly to the spot on the horizon where the sun rises on the June solstice, the shortest day of the year in the southern hemisphere. Other alignments may have tracked the rising of the bright star Sirius or the Pleiades cluster, celestial events that signaled crucial turning points in the agricultural calendar. This was not casual observation, it was a sophisticated science of survival encoded in architecture. Long before the Inca claimed this sacred origin, the Tiwanaku culture dominated the region for centuries. Their mastery of astronomy is most famously captured in the monolithic Gateway of the Sun, now located at their ceremonial capital just south of the lake. This towering stone arch is intricately carved with a central figure believed to represent a solar deity, surrounded by 48 winged attendants that some researchers interpret as a complex lunar and solar calendar. The precision of its carvings suggests an advanced understanding of celestial cycles, knowledge that would have been essential for organizing a society dependent on farming in a harsh, high-altitude environment. But why here? Why was Lake Titicaca the focal point for this cosmic observation? The lake itself provides the perfect conditions. At over 12,000 feet, the air is thin and extraordinarily clear, offering a dazzling, unobstructed view of the night sky. The vast, flat expanse of water acts like a natural mirror, doubling the heavens and creating the powerful illusion that the sky and the lake were two halves of the same realm. In this landscape, the boundary between Earth and cosmos dissolved. It is easy to understand how the Tiwanaku and later the Inca came to see the lake not just as a body of water, but as a reflective surface of the divine. Tracking the solstices was more than a scientific exercise, it was a sacred duty. Predicting the rainy season meant ensuring the survival of crops like potatoes and quinoa. By marking the sun's lowest point in the sky, priests could announce the time to prepare the fields, weaving astronomy directly into the ritual life of the community. The sacredness of Lake Titicaca, therefore, was a blend of stark necessity and profound spirituality. The water gave life, and the sky above it told that life when to begin anew. Their temples were their observatories, their rituals were their science, and the quiet, star-filled nights over the lake were their most important text. The stars over Titicaca charted the cycles of life, but for other ancient people, a lake marked the boundary of death itself. In the cool, green mountains of northern Spain, a small, unassuming cave overlooks what was once the shore of an ancient lake. This is La Bronya, and in 2006, a pair of spelunkers discovered a secret that had been kept for 7,000 years. Two skeletons lay side by side in the darkness, remarkably preserved by the cave's constant temperature and humidity. These were not mere bones, they were a window into a lost world, the world of Mesolithic hunter-gatherers who roamed Europe long before farming arrived. When scientists analyzed the DNA of one, dubbed La Bronya man, the results were a shock to our visual imagination of prehistory. This man, who lived and died around 5,000 years before the pyramids were built, had startling blue eyes. But his skin was dark, a combination that overturned simplistic ideas about how ancient Europeans looked. His genetic portrait tells a story of a continent still in flux, where populations from Africa and the Near East mingled with older groups, creating a diversity that later waves of migration would reshape. The mystery of La Bronya, however, is not just who he was, but why he was there. The cave is not a typical burial ground. It is small, cramped, and difficult to access, located right at the edge of what was then a lake. The bodies were not formally interred in graves, but placed directly on the cave floor, surrounded by a small, deliberate collection of artifacts. They were accompanied by the teeth and bones of red deer, likely from a single animal, and a collection of perforated deer teeth that may have been a necklace or adornment. These are not the tools of daily life, but objects of symbolic value. This careful placement in a liminal space between the solid earth of the cave and the reflective surface of the lake suggests a ritual act. Were these two men given a special burial, or were they offerings? The distinction may have been blurry to the people who left them there. Many ancient cultures viewed lakes, caves, and springs as portals to the underworld, places where the veil between worlds was thin. Placing the dead, or perhaps sacrificing individuals, at such a threshold could have been seen as a direct way to send them into the realm of ancestors or spirits. The deer teeth are a crucial clue. In hunter-gatherer societies, the red deer was more than food. It was a powerful symbol of strength, vitality, and the bounty of the forest. Adorning the dead with parts of such an animal could have been a way to equip them for a spiritual journey, or to honor them by associating them with the most respected prey. The lake itself completes the ritual landscape. Water, still and deep, has universally been seen as a reflective surface for the sky and a passage to the world below. By choosing a cave overlooking the water, these Mesolithic people were situating their dead at the ultimate crossroads. The bodies were in the earth facing the water under the sky. Labronia man, with his dark skin and blue eyes, challenges our assumptions about identity. His final resting place challenges our assumptions about spirituality. It tells us that even 7 millennia ago, people were seeking meaning in the landscape, using the most powerful natural features like a quiet lake to bridge the greatest human mystery of all. Blue eyes staring from a dark face remind us how deeply our ancestors were tied to their landscape, but some landscapes seem to breed creatures of pure story. Far from the caves of Spain, in the cool, deep waters between New York, Vermont, and Quebec, another pair of eyes is said to watch from the depths. Lake Champlain is a long, narrow finger of water carved by glaciers, a fjord-like trench nestled between the Adirondack and Green Mountains. And for centuries, people have reported seeing something immense and serpentine gliding through its waves. They call it Champ. This is North America's most famous lake monster, a homegrown legend with roots that stretch back long before European settlers ever arrived. The Abenaki people, indigenous to the region, spoke of a giant serpent or water creature in the lake, which they knew as Titicaca. Their stories described a being of great power, a spirit of the deep that commanded respect. When French explorer Samuel de Champlain himself navigated the lake in 1609, his journal noted a strange, 5-foot-long fish with a jaw full of dangerous teeth, which he identified as a garfish. While not a monster, this entry is often cited as the first European record of something unusual in the water, planting a seed that would grow with every new account. Sightings continued through the 19th and 20th centuries, reported by farmers, steamboat captains, and eventually families on vacation. The descriptions are strikingly consistent: a dark, humped creature longer than 20 feet, with a serpentine neck and a head that sometimes lifts above the surface. The most famous piece of evidence emerged in the summer of 1977. A woman named Sandra Mancy was enjoying a picnic with her family on the lake's eastern shore when she noticed a strange disturbance in the water. She grabbed her Kodak Instamatic camera and snapped a single photograph before the object sank from view. The developed picture showed a dark, multi-humped form rising from the calm lake with a small, dinosaur-like head and neck. It became known as the Mancy photograph, and for years it was held up as the most compelling evidence for Champ's existence, subjected to analysis by the FBI and various photographic experts who could not prove it was a hoax. While some later suggested it could be a submerged log or a swimming deer, the image's clarity and the witnesses' credibility gave the legend a powerful boost. This single photo helped galvanize a community of believers and investigators. Groups like the Lake Champlain Phenomena Investigation, or LCPI, formed to systematically document sightings, interview witnesses, and even conduct sonar sweeps of the lake's deepest basins, which plunge over 400 feet. They have collected hundreds of reports and some intriguing, though inconclusive, sonar contacts. But what could Champ actually be if it is not a myth? The most popular natural explanation points to the lake sturgeon. These ancient fish can live for over a century and grow to lengths of 7 or even 8 feet. When they breach the surface, their armored, prehistoric appearance and unusual shape could easily be mistaken for a monster's back. Another, more exotic theory suggests a relic population of zeuglodons, primitive, snake-like whales that went extinct millions of years ago. The described shape of Champ matches fossil reconstructions of these creatures remarkably well. Yet, biologists point out that Lake Champlain was entirely covered by a glacier until about 10,000 years ago, making it impossible for any marine reptile from the age of dinosaurs to have survived there. A zeuglodon would also need to surface to breathe far more frequently than sightings occur. The sturgeon theory is far more plausible, but even a giant sturgeon does not account for all the reports of long necks and small heads. The persistence of the Champ legend, much like that of Nessie, speaks to something deeper than biology. Lake Champlain is an ideal setting for a monster mystery. It is incredibly deep and cold, with steep, wooded shores that limit vantage points and create shifting shadows on the water. Its great age and glacial origins lend it an air of ancient mystery. The legend has been embraced by the communities around it, becoming a vital part of the local identity. You will find Champ on town seals, in museum exhibits, and celebrated at festivals. It fuels a thriving tourism industry, from monster-themed boat tours to souvenir shops. Champ is more than a possible animal. It is a shared story, a piece of living folklore that transforms a beautiful glacial lake into a place of wonder. It invites everyone who visits to look a little closer at the water, to wonder what might lie beneath the reflection of the mountains, and to believe, if only for a moment, that the world still holds secrets large enough to stir the surface of our everyday reality. A monster story thrives on what we cannot see, but sometimes a lake offers up a physical object that deepens the mystery instead of solving it. New Hampshire's largest lake, Winnipesaukee, is a sprawling maze of islands and channels, a beloved vacation spot whose clear waters seem to promise simple pleasures. Yet its depths hold two separate puzzles, one carved in stone and the other rooted in time. In 1872, workers digging a hole for a fence post near the lake shore unearthed something utterly unexpected. It was a dark, egg-shaped stone, about 4 inches tall and meticulously smoothed, with a hole drilled perfectly through its center from both ends. But it was the carvings that made it an enigma. Its surface was covered in strange, precise symbols: a face, teepee-like structures, an ear of corn, a star, a spiral, and various lines and circles. This was the mystery stone of Lake Winnipesaukee, and from the moment it was found, it defied easy explanation. The immediate question was who made it and for what purpose. The symbols seemed to hint at indigenous American origins. The corn and teepee motifs pointed to agricultural tribes. Yet the stone's shape and the precision of its drilling were unlike any known Native American artifact from the region. Some speculated it was a Celtic artifact brought by pre-Columbian transatlantic voyagers. Others saw it as a Victorian-era hoax, a clever piece of folk art created to baffle the locals. Scientific analysis has only added layers to the debate. Geological tests show the stone is a type of quartzite, and the drill holes appear to have been made with tools more advanced than simple stone or bone drills available to local tribes centuries ago. The uniformity of the holes suggests a metal tool or a technique with consistent rotational force. This detail fuels the theory of a 19th century creation, perhaps using a contemporary lapidary drill. Yet, if it is a hoax, it is an exceptionally well-crafted one, with symbolic motifs that do not neatly align with any single known culture, ancient or modern. The stone remains an isolated anomaly, a message without a context, sitting in a display case at the New Hampshire Historical Society, silently challenging every visitor to decipher its code. But the lake holds another, older secret that provides a possible backdrop for this strange artifact. In certain shallow areas of Winnipesaukee, particularly during droughts or in early spring before boat traffic stirs the sediment, a ghostly landscape becomes visible. A submerged forest of ancient tree stumps, their roots still anchored in the lakebed, stands in silent ranks beneath the water. These are not logs that fell in recently, they are the remains of a real forest that grew here when this was dry land. This is direct evidence of a dramatic environmental shift. After the last glaciers retreated from New England, they left behind a colossal meltwater lake, much larger than present-day Winnipesaukee. Over thousands of years, that lake gradually drained to its current level. The stumps we see are the remnants of a forest that grew along the receding shoreline, a pine and hardwood ecosystem that was eventually drowned as the water settled into its modern basin. This paleo-landscape reveals a crucial chapter in the post-glacial history of the region, a time of ecological change and opportunity. and where there were forests and stable shorelines, there were people. For millennia, indigenous peoples, ancestors of the Abenaki and other Algonquian-speaking groups, inhabited this changing landscape. They would have hunted, fished, and camped along these very shores, watching as the water slowly claimed the trees. This context makes the mystery stone infinitely more intriguing. Could it be a ritual object from these early inhabitants, a talisman carved to mark a sacred site or commemorate a relationship with a lake that was literally growing around them? If the stone is genuinely ancient, it might be a rare, preserved token from a culture that lived in that lost transitional world. The lake, then, becomes more than a scenic wonder. It is a layered archive. The submerged forest records a climatic event, a physical change in the earth. The mystery stone, if connected to that time, could record a human response to that change, an attempt to inscribe meaning onto a shifting world. Together, they suggest that Winnipesaukee is not just hiding waterlogged trees, but forgotten chapters of human experience, waiting for the right combination of low water and high curiosity to tell their story. The clear waters of Winnipesaukee hide forests turn to stone, but on the vast, stormy expanse of Lake Superior, the land itself is said to be an illusion. Superior is not merely a lake, it is an inland sea, the largest freshwater body on Earth by surface area, with a reputation for swallowing ships and spawning legends. Among the most persistent is the tale of the Phantom Island, sometimes called the Isle of the Dead. For centuries, sailors and fishermen have returned to port with eerily consistent stories. They speak of a rocky, forested island that appears suddenly in the open water, often shrouded in the lake's famous rolling mist, only to vanish by the time another ship tries to reach it. This was not a friendly sight. In maritime lore, the apparition was almost universally a harbinger of misfortune, a spectral landmark linked to sudden storms, navigational errors, and tragic shipwrecks. The island became a ghost in the collective memory of those who worked the lake, a place that felt real enough to chart in the mind, yet could never be anchored on a map. Except sometimes it was. Historical maps of the Great Lakes from the 18th and 19th centuries occasionally include mysterious, now non-existent islands. One of the most famous is Isle Phelipox, which appeared on several important maps, including some used during treaty negotiations. It was depicted as a substantial landmass in northern Lake Superior, often alongside the real Isle Royale. For decades, cartographers copied it from one map to the next, an accepted feature of the lake's geography. Explorers and traders would have sailed looking for it, their confidence in their charts shaken when they found only empty, rolling waves. This was not simple cartographic error born of guesswork. It was the documentation of a shared experience. So many people saw something that mapmakers felt obliged to include it. The scientific explanation for this centuries-old mystery is as dramatic as the legend itself, and it lies in the unique physics of Lake Superior's atmosphere. The phenomenon is known as a superior mirage, or more specifically, a fata morgana. This occurs when a layer of cold air sits beneath a layer of warmer air, a condition called a temperature inversion. Light traveling through these layers bends or refracts, acting like a lens in the sky. This atmospheric lens can take a distant, real object like a rugged coastline or a far-off island and stretch it, compress it, and lift it into the air. A headland dozens of miles away can appear as a towering, floating castle. A real island beyond the horizon can be magnified and brought into view, seemingly suspended above the water. On the vast, flat canvas of Lake Superior, with its rapidly changing temperatures, these conditions are perfect. A sailor looking toward the horizon might see a distorted, inverted, and elevated image of the actual Michipicoten Island or the cliffs of the Ontario shore, presented as a solitary, impossible landmass where none should be. As the temperature layers shift in the wind or sun, the image shimmers, changes shape, and disappears. The Phantom Island is thus a masterpiece of natural illusion. It blends tangible geography with the treachery of light, turning solid rock into a sacred specter. This mystery does more than explain a ghost story. It reveals how our ancestors interpreted the world. When you are alone on a massive, unpredictable lake, and the very air conspires to show you lands that are not there, it is no wonder that the mind turns to omens. The Isle of the Dead was a psychological landmark, a symbol of the lake's supreme power to deceive and to demand respect. It was a sacred illusion born not from faith in gods, but from the awe-inspiring and sometimes terrifying magic of physics. While the air over Lake Superior can conjure phantom islands, the mud at the bottom of a small Italian crater lake held something astonishingly real. Just south of Rome, the perfectly circular Lake Nemi has long been a place of quiet reverence, sacred to the goddess Diana Nemorensis. But its dark waters hid a secret that would ignite an archaeological obsession, a secret that proved the Roman Empire's engineering genius extended even to its leisure. For centuries, local fishermen had snagged their nets on massive, submerged timbers. They spoke of great ships lying in the deep, and the rumors were true. In the 1st century AD, the infamous Emperor Caligula ordered the construction of 2 colossal pleasure barges, essentially floating palaces, right on the lake's surface. These were not warships, they were monuments to excess, designed for lavish parties and imperial display. After Caligula's assassination, the ships were stripped of valuables and deliberately scuttled, left to sink into the soft volcanic mud where they would be preserved for nearly 2,000 years. The desire to see these legendary vessels led to one of history's most dramatic archaeological operations. Starting in 1927, the Italian government, under Mussolini's fascist regime, embarked on a colossal engineering project. They decided to drain Lake Nemi. Using ancient Roman underground channels as a starting point, engineers installed massive electric pumps that ran day and night for over 5 years, lowering the lake level by more than 65 feet. By 1932, the mud had receded and the 2 giant hulls were exposed, resting in a specially constructed dry dock. What the world saw was breathtaking. These were the largest ancient ships ever discovered. One was over 230 feet long, a floating villa with a marble floor, mosaic tiles, heated baths, and even a system of pipes that provided running water. But the true marvel was not the opulence, it was the technology. The ships were equipped with advanced bronze piston pumps, intricate lead piping, and most astonishingly, rotating platforms supported by metal ball bearings. This last discovery rewrote history books, proving the Romans had developed and used ball-bearing technology a full 1,500 years before it was previously thought to have been invented. But why were such technological masterpieces built on a small, secluded lake? The leading theory connects them directly to the sacred nature of the site. Lake Nemi was the center of the cult of Diana Nemorensis, a goddess of the hunt, the moon, and the underworld. Her sanctuary on the lakeshore was one of the most important in central Italy. It is possible Caligula's barges were not merely for parties, but for elaborate religious festivals and rituals dedicated to Diana. The ships could have been used to reenact sacred myths or to parade statues of the goddess across the water, blending imperial power with divine spectacle. They were a physical bridge between the emperor's worldly authority and the spiritual power of the ancient grove. For a brief moment, these magnificent vessels were saved, housed in a new museum built right on the lakeshore. Their secrets were being catalogued, their engineering studied. Then, in the final, chaotic days of World War II, in June of 1944, retreating German forces set fire to the museum. The ships, made of ancient tinder-dry wood, were utterly destroyed. The flames consumed in a few hours what had taken 2 millennia to preserve and 5 years of Herculean effort to recover. Today, all that remains are the scorched foundations of the museum, a few charred fragments, and the meticulously recorded drawings and photographs from the excavation. The lake has been refilled, and the dockyards are silent once more. The full story of Caligula's floating palaces sank back into mystery, a poignant reminder that some treasures once lost can be lost forever. The ashes of Caligula's ships remind us that lakes can be both museums and tombs. High in the frozen reaches of the Indian Himalayas, a lake holds a collection of bones that has baffled scientists for decades. This is Rupkund, often called Skeleton Lake. At over 16,000 feet above sea level, it is a desolate, rocky bowl, ice-bound for most of the year. But during the brief summer melt, a grisly sight appears. The shallow waters and stony shores become littered with the skeletal remains of hundreds of people. For years, the prevailing explanation was a local legend. Folklore spoke of a king, his queen, and their entire royal procession traveling to a sacred shrine. They allegedly disrespected the mountain goddess Nanda Devi, who responded with a furious storm of iron-hard hail, killing every last member of the party. The bones, it was said, were their remains preserved in the icy water. This story made a kind of poetic sense, a divine punishment frozen in time. But when modern science finally turned its gaze to Rupkund, the story shattered into something far more complex and mysterious. In the early 2000s, researchers conducted detailed genetic and isotopic analysis on the bones. The results were staggering. The skeletons were not from a single tragic event involving a homogeneous group. Instead, they came from two genetically distinct populations, and they died centuries apart. One group, making up the majority, had genetic ancestry linking them to present-day South Asia, likely pilgrims from India. The other, smaller group, however, had ancestry strikingly similar to people from the Eastern Mediterranean, modern-day Greece and Crete. Even more telling, chemical analysis of their bones, which records diet, showed the Mediterranean individuals had consumed a diet very different from the local group in the years before their deaths. This was not one catastrophe, but at least two separate events separated by roughly 1,000 years. The discovery rewrote the mystery completely. It transformed Rupkund from the site of a local legend into a node in an ancient global network of movement. What on earth were people from the Mediterranean doing at a remote, high-altitude lake in the Himalayas, over 2,000 kilometers from their homeland around the year 800 AD? And what brought the later group of South Asian pilgrims to the same fatal spot? The pilgrimage route theory provides a crucial clue. Rupkund lies on the path to the holy shrine of Nanda Devi, a journey still undertaken today. It is plausible that both groups were pilgrims drawn by deep religious devotion. For the Mediterranean group, this suggests an astonishing journey, perhaps traders or travelers who had integrated into communities along the Silk Road and adopted local religious practices, or members of a distant sect making a once-in-a-lifetime sacred voyage. The cause of death remains debated. The hailstorm legend is not entirely dismissed, as many skulls show short, deep fractures consistent with blows from large, round objects like hail the size of cricket balls. A sudden, severe storm at that altitude would be lethal, offering no shelter. But an epidemic or a catastrophic landslide are also possibilities. The current, haunting mystery is not just how they died, but why they were there together, separated by a millennium. Rupkund Lake is a sacred site that became a mass grave on at least two occasions, drawing people from opposite ends of the ancient world to its lonely shore, only to become part of its bleak landscape. It is a testament to the powerful, sometimes fatal, pull of faith and the unpredictable cruelty of the mountains, a bottomless pit of questions where every bone tells a story we are only beginning to understand. The bones of Rupkund speak of journeys across continents, but in the heart of Siberia, a lake so vast it is called the Sacred Sea holds mysteries that defy any single explanation. Lake Baikal is a titan among lakes, the deepest and oldest on Earth, holding more fresh water than all of North America's Great Lakes combined. Its age is staggering, formed over 25 million years ago in a massive continental rift that is still slowly tearing Asia apart. This is not a still, ancient relic. It is a geologically active wound in the planet's crust, and its depths behave in ways that have confused and frightened people for generations. Submariners and research teams conducting deep water surveys have repeatedly reported bizarre instrument malfunctions and powerful, unexplained magnetic anomalies. Compasses spin erratically, sonar returns ghostly, shifting shapes, and navigation systems fail outright in certain zones. Even more chilling are the persistent accounts from pilots, fishermen, and scientists of strange, powerful lights moving far beneath the ice or glowing up from the blackest trenches. These are not the gentle bioluminescence of plankton, but large, structured illuminations that seem to move with purpose. The immediate, rational instinct is to look for a geological cause, and Baikal provides plenty of candidates. The lake sits atop the active Baikal Rift Zone where the Earth's crust is being pulled apart. This creates immense tectonic pressures, fault lines, and volcanic activity. One compelling theory points to the release of massive pockets of methane gas from the lakebed. As the gas seeps upward and interacts with sediments, it could potentially create electrical charges or even ignite, causing deep water flares and disturbing local magnetic fields. Another possibility involves the unique mineral composition of the region, with vast deposits of magnetic ores that could create natural interference. Yet, for the indigenous Bariat people who have lived on Baikal shores for millennia, these phenomena have never required a purely scientific answer. To them, the lake is a living, breathing deity, a sacred sea they call Bagal Nua. It is inhabited by powerful spirits, most notably its ruler, the mighty Bahan, and a vast array of lesser beings in its depths. The strange lights are not gas flares. They are the lanterns of underwater spirits or the glowing scales of the master of the lake himself. The magnetic disturbances are a sign of his power, a reminder that this is a realm where human technology is an unwelcome guest. Shamans perform rituals on its shores to appease these spirits, offering prayers and libations to ensure safe passage for fishermen and calm waters for their communities. This creates a fascinating duality. The scientific and the spiritual explanations are not necessarily in conflict. They are two different languages describing the same profound reality. The rift zone's immense subterranean forces generate the physical phenomena, the gas, the magnetism, the eerie lights. The human mind, confronted with such power in a landscape of sublime beauty and danger, naturally weaves those phenomena into a narrative of spirit and sacredness. The lake's sheer immensity and age demand a story that matches its scale. So, is Baikal a giant natural laboratory of tectonic and limnological oddities, or is it a sacred sea ruled by ancient spirits? The truth likely lies in the connection between the two. The same forces that make it a hotspot for unique scientific study, the rifting Earth and the resulting biodiversity found nowhere else, are the very forces that make it feel alive, powerful, and deeply supernatural. To dive into Baikal, whether with a submersible or through the stories of a shaman, is to encounter a place where the planet's raw, physical power is so palpable it becomes a character in its own right, a silent, deep, and magnetic mystery. The magnetic depths of Baikal remind us that a lake can be a living entity, but a lake can also be a perfect, beautiful grave. In the Guatemalan highlands, water of an impossible blue fills a crater ringed by 3 towering volcanoes. This is Lake Atitlan, a place so stunning it has been called the most beautiful lake on Earth. For the Maya who have lived on its shores for 2 millennia, its beauty is woven with sorrow and sacred memory. Their legends speak of a city that once stood on an island in the lake, a place called Samabaj. It was a center of pilgrimage, a holy site where people traveled to honor the gods. Then, the stories say, the gods grew angry or the earth itself shifted. The city was swallowed, leaving only the deep, calm water as its tomb. For generations, this was considered a poetic myth, a story to explain the lake's profound spiritual presence. Then, in the late 1990s, a local diver named Roberto Samayoa was exploring the lakebed over 100 feet down when his hands brushed against something that was not rock. He found pots, perfectly intact ceramic vessels, sitting on the bottom as if they had just been placed there. He had discovered Samabaj, the lost city, and it was real. Subsequent archaeological surveys using sonar and careful excavation have mapped a sprawling ceremonial complex. They found the foundations of temples and plazas, stone altars, and several stone monuments called stelae, which were often carved with the histories of kings and gods. This was not a small village, it was a significant religious site, a destination. The mystery is not just that it sank, but why it was built in such a vulnerable place and how it met its end. The leading theory points to the very volcanoes that make the landscape so dramatic. A massive volcanic eruption, or perhaps a series of earthquakes linked to the unstable geology, could have caused a sudden, catastrophic landslide into the lake. This landslide would have created a colossal wave, a tsunami that would have swamped the island city in moments. Another, slower theory suggests a gradual rise in the lake's water level, possibly due to tectonic activity blocking an outlet, slowly drowning the city over decades, giving its inhabitants time to abandon it but leaving its structures intact. The discoveries on the lakebed provide clues to a sudden disaster. The pottery found by Samayoa was not broken or scattered. It was found in groups, as if left in place during a ceremony or in daily use. This suggests the city was occupied right up until the moment it was flooded, with no time for people to save their belongings. The sacred site became a time capsule. This transforms Lake Atitlan from a merely beautiful place into a landscape of profound adaptation. The Maya did not forget Samabaj. Even after the city was lost, the lake remained and grew even more sacred. They shifted their villages to the new shoreline, but they continued to venerate the water as the home of their ancestors and their gods. The tragedy was incorporated into their cosmology, the sunken city becoming a part of the lake's spiritual power. It reveals a sophisticated relationship with a volatile environment where disaster is not an end but a transformation. The Mayan Atlantis is not a tale of a punished, sinful people, but a story of resilience. It shows how a culture can absorb a catastrophic environmental change into its identity, turning a site of loss into a permanent, hallowed memorial, ensuring that what lies beneath the serene surface is never truly forgotten. From a lake that drowned a city, we travel to a lake that simply vanished, leaving its secrets exposed to the desert sun. In the remote Willandra Lakes region of southeastern Australia, the landscape tells a story of radical change. What is now a chain of dry, dusty basins was once a lush system of freshwater lakes teeming with life. The largest of these is Lake Mungo, a name that resonates through archaeology. Today, it is a vast white clay pan surrounded by a crescent-shaped dune of sand and silt known as the Walls of China. This eerie, wind-sculpted lunette rises like a bleached spine from the flat earth, its ridges whispering with every gust. But 40,000 years ago, this was a shoreline. People lived here, fished here, raised families here. And when members of that community died, they performed rites so careful, so deliberate, that their echoes would survive the lake itself. In 1968, a young geologist named Jim Bowler was surveying the lunette when he spotted something emerging from the sand. It was a scattering of burnt bones. This was Mungo Lady, the remains of a young woman who had been cremated, her bones carefully smashed, burned again, and then buried in a small pit. The ritual was complex and unmistakably ceremonial. Then, in 1974, Bowler made another find just a few hundred meters away. Mungo Man was an elderly male, laid out on his back with his hands crossed over his pelvis, his body sprinkled with red ochre, a sacred pigment. These were not casual disposals, they were burials performed with intention, and we must infer deep feeling. The dating of these remains sent shockwaves through the scientific world. Mungo Lady and Mungo Man were both around 42,000 years old. This meant that the first Australians, having made an incredible journey across ancient land bridges and seas, had not only reached this continent but had also established sophisticated spiritual beliefs and funeral practices almost as soon as they arrived. This discovery pushed back the timeline of human ritual in Australia by tens of thousands of years. It proved that the people of Lake Mungo were not merely surviving, they were contemplating life, death, and what might lie beyond. They were connecting with their landscape in a sacred way, using the red earth to honor their dead, perhaps to symbolize blood or life, or a connection to this land they called home. The mystery of Lake Mungo is not one of a sudden disaster, but of a slow climatic transformation. The lake did not sink, it retreated. Over millennia, the climate shifted, becoming drier. The freshwater slowly evaporated, leaving behind salts and clays. The fish and shellfish vanished, the vegetation changed, and the people who had lived on its shores for generations were forced to adapt or move on. The sacred living lake became a sacred ancestral desert. The walls of China Loch Ness, where the remains were found, is the key to this story. It is not a wall at all, but a dune built up over eons from sand and silt blown from the exposed lakebed during dry periods. It acts as a layered archive, preserving shells, stone tools, animal bones, and hearths in distinct strata. Within this archive, the burials of Mungo Man and Lady are like perfectly preserved sentences in a long, fading book. Their placement tells us they were buried with care in a place that was meaningful, a lake shore that was central to their community's life. Today, the lake is a ghost of itself, a blinding white pan under a vast sky. The water is gone, but the sacredness remains. For the Aboriginal traditional owners, the Pokunji, Ungji Yampa, and Mutt-Thai peoples, this is not an archaeological site first, it is a living cemetery, a place of deep spiritual connection to country and ancestor. The whispering sands of the Loch Ness do not just tell a story of ancient climate change, they tell a story of enduring culture, of a people who have remembered this place and its meaning across 400 centuries, long after the last ripple faded from the water's surface. The ghostly white expanse of Lake Mungo holds the memory of water, but in the Canadian Rockies, a lake actively creates its own light. Lake Abraham is a reservoir, its waters held back by a modern dam, yet each winter it stages a spectacle that feels utterly primeval. As the bitter cold sets in, the surface freezes into a thick, clear pane of ice, and trapped within that ice, like jewels suspended in glass, are countless perfect white bubbles, stacked in columns from the depths to the surface. They are beautiful, but they are also volatile. If a hole is drilled to one of these bubbles and a flame is introduced, the gas within ignites, creating a sudden, roaring pillar of fire erupting from the frozen lake. This is the eternal flame of Lake Abraham, a marriage of extreme beauty and raw elemental power. The science behind it is a story of decay and capture. The lake was created by flooding a valley that contained vegetation, soil, and peat. This organic matter now lies on the reservoir floor, where bacteria slowly break it down in the oxygen-poor environment, a process that produces methane gas. In summer, the methane simply bubbles up to the surface and dissipates into the air. But in winter, as the lake freezes from the top down, each rising bubble becomes trapped. New bubbles push up from below and freeze in turn, creating those stunning vertical chains. The ice acts as a transparent seal, locking the highly flammable gas in place until it is released. This modern, understood phenomenon offers a brilliant key to unlocking countless ancient mysteries. Before we had the language of microbiology and chemistry, how would a wandering hunter or an early settler have interpreted such a sight? Imagine coming across a frozen lake in a remote valley and seeing these strange, ghostly forms suspended beneath the ice. Then, perhaps by the chance strike of a torch or a lightning strike, witnessing the very water and ice seem to catch fire. It would be a miracle or a terrifying omen. This exact process is likely behind the persistent global folklore of burning lakes and marsh lights. The will-o'-the-wisp, a phantom flame said to lure travelers into treacherous bogs, has explanations in spontaneously igniting methane from decaying swamp matter. Stories of lakes that burned with an unearthly fire, found in cultures from Siberia to the Amazon, almost certainly describe natural gas seeps that could be set alight. What we see as a fascinating geological process, our ancestors would have seen as pure magic, the work of a spirit or a god. A lake that could hold fire within ice defied all natural logic. Such a place would instantly become sacred, a portal to the elemental forces of the world. It would be a site for offerings, for rituals seeking to appease or harness that power, or a place strictly avoided for fear of angering the fiery entity within. Lake Abraham, for all its engineered origins, shows us how effortlessly the ancient world could blaze into being. A simple, natural chemical reaction, witnessed without explanation, was enough to transform a landscape into a legend, proving that the sacred often begins not in scripture, but in a moment of stunned and fearful wonder at the world's impossible behavior. Fire trapped in ice is a modern spectacle, but the ancient world knew of lakes that breathed death. In the restless volcanic fields west of Naples, Italy, lies a circular, dark body of water that the Romans feared and revered in equal measure. This is Lake Avernus, a name that translates to without birds, and it was not a place for the living. Ancient writers like Virgil and Strabo described a grim, still lake surrounded by steep, wooded banks, its surface often shrouded in a poisonous mist. Birds that attempted to fly across it would drop from the sky, suffocated by invisible vapors rising from the water. This eerie phenomenon earned the lake its name and its terrifying reputation. To the Romans, Avernus was not merely a lake, it was a spiraculum mortis, a vent or breathing hole of death. They believed it was a literal gateway to the underworld, a place where the barrier between the world of the living and the realm of the dead was thin enough to cross. This belief was immortalized in one of Rome's great founding myths, Virgil's Aeneid. The hero Aeneas, seeking to speak with the spirit of his dead father, is guided by the prophetess known as the Cumaean Sibyl to the shores of Lake Avernus. Here, at this very vent of death, they perform sacred rites and then descend into a cavern, entering the vast, shadowy kingdom of Hades itself. The lake was not just a symbolic entrance, it was the practical starting point for the ultimate journey. This connection to the afterlife made Avernus a place of immense sacred power, but it was a power that demanded caution and ritual expertise. You did not approach such a gateway lightly. Overlooking this ominous water was the source of that expertise. Perched on a nearby hillside was the cavern of the Cumaean Sibyl, the most famous oracle in the Roman world. This prophetess was said to channel the words of the god Apollo, delivering cryptic prophecies that could shape the fate of empires. Her cave was a long, trapezoidal tunnel cut into the rock, ending in a chamber where she would deliver her divine pronouncements. The geographical link was deliberate and profound. The Sibyl, who could communicate with the divine and foresee the future, had her sanctuary facing the lake that was the door to the past, to the world of ancestors and the dead. This created a complete spiritual landscape. At Avernus, you could descend to consult the dead, and at the Sibyl's cave, you could seek guidance for the future. One site dealt with the consequences of life, the other with its potential paths. Together, they offered a terrifying form of wisdom, but what created this bird-killing underworld vent? The answer lies in the ground beneath it. Lake Avernus fills the crater of an extinct volcano, part of the vast, smoldering Campi Flegrae or Phlegrean fields, a supervolcanic caldera that is still active today. The region is a geologic pressure cooker, with magma chambers close to the surface heating the groundwater and rock. The toxic fumes that so frightened the ancients were almost certainly volcanic gases, primarily carbon dioxide and hydrogen sulfide. Carbon dioxide is heavier than air and can pool in low-lying areas like a crater basin. displacing oxygen and silently suffocating any creature that wanders into it. Hydrogen sulfide, which smells like rotten eggs even in tiny amounts, would have added a palpable stench of decay to the site, reinforcing the idea of death and corruption. The geologic reality directly manufactured the myth. The lake literally emitted a breath that could kill, making the idea of it being a spiraculum mortis not a poetic metaphor, but a logical, observed conclusion. The sacred geography of Avernus was not invented, it was perceived. The Romans correctly identified a place of profound natural danger, and their mythology provided a framework to explain it, to ritualize it, and ultimately, to harness its fearful power for their own spiritual needs. A gateway to the underworld is a place of profound finality, but what if a lake revealed a structure built for observing eternity? Far from the volcanic craters of Italy, in the sun-scorched outback of Western Australia, a different kind of sacred geometry lies waiting for the drought. Lake Cowan is a vast, ephemeral salt pan in the Goldfields region, a blinding white expanse that shimmers under an endless sky. For most of the year, it is a dry, cracked plain, a place of dust and silence. But when the rare rains come, it transforms into a shallow inland sea. And when that water finally evaporates, it sometimes leaves behind a startling secret etched into the earth. Scattered across the lakebed are hundreds of granite slabs, some standing upright over a meter tall, arranged in deliberate lines and sprawling circles that stretch for hundreds of meters. This is not a random scattering of boulders. The patterns are too organized, the placements too intentional. From the air, the site looks like a vast, cryptic diagram drawn in stone on a canvas of white clay. The immediate, awe-inspiring question is simple: who built this? The local Aboriginal peoples, the Wangatha people, have ancient and deep connections to this land. Their oral histories and songlines weave through the entire region, mapping the landscape in stories of creation ancestors. While specific stories about the stone arrangement are not widely published out of cultural respect, it is entirely plausible within the context of Aboriginal cultural practice. Across Australia, Indigenous peoples created sophisticated stone arrangements for ceremonial purposes, as territorial markers, and as astronomical calendars. The most famous, like the stone circles at Wurdi Wong in Victoria, are now recognized as ancient observatories that track the solstices and equinoxes. Could the Lake Cowan stones be a similar construct, perhaps one of the oldest in the world? Some researchers studying the site suggest the alignments of certain stones might point to significant solar or celestial events. The sheer scale of the arrangement implies a substantial communal effort, a project that would have required planning, labor, and a shared purpose that spanned generations. This points to a complex, settled culture with advanced knowledge of their environment and the cosmos. Yet not everyone is convinced the stones are a human creation at all. The opposing theory argues that this is a spectacular natural formation. The region is geologically ancient, shaped by immense forces. Could the patterns be the result of extraordinary weathering and erosion? Perhaps the stones are the remnants of a granite outcrop that fractured along natural fault lines, with the fragments settling into seemingly arranged positions over millions of years. The harsh environment supports this, with extreme temperature fluctuations, rare but torrential floods, and relentless winds that could theoretically move and position stones over eons. The debate is heated precisely because the site is so difficult to study definitively. Lake Cowan is remote and inhospitable. Access is challenging, and the window for investigation is narrow, dictated by the unpredictable cycle of flood and drought. The stones themselves offer few clues. They are unworked granite, bearing no obvious carvings or markings that would scream of human craftsmanship. Traditional archaeological methods, like excavation for associated artifacts or charcoal for radiocarbon dating, are frustrated by the lakebed context. Floods would have scoured the area, potentially burying or removing any smaller tools or evidence of hearths that could provide a clear date. this leaves researchers in a frustrating bind. The arrangement looks profoundly artificial to the human eye, which is trained to seek pattern and purpose, but science demands evidence beyond pattern recognition. Without definitive proof of tool marks, associated cultural material, or a clear dating method, the mystery hangs in a delicate balance between an incredible human achievement and an equally incredible geological accident. This tension is what makes Lake Cowan so compelling. It highlights a fundamental truth about sacred landscapes: they are not always adorned with temples or gold. Sometimes they are subtle, their power lying in arrangement and alignment, in a dialogue between stone and sky that is so minimalist it borders on the invisible. Whether built by ancestral hands or by the patient, chaotic artistry of nature, the stones of Lake Cowan command attention. They sit on a threshold between categories, challenging us to decide where the line is between a natural wonder and a cultural one, and reminding us that some of the world's greatest mysteries are not hidden in deep water, but laid out in plain sight on a dry lakebed, waiting for us to learn how to see them. A lakebed of cryptic stones leaves us pondering human intention, but in Antarctica, the landscape itself bleeds. In the desolate, wind-scoured expanse of the McMurdo Dry Valleys, a sight defies all logic. From the towering, blue-white face of the Taylor Glacier, a waterfall the color of rust stains the ice, cascading down in a slow, viscous trickle into the frozen shores of Lake Bonny. This is Blood Falls, a 5-story tall gash of crimson against a world of monochrome white and gray rock. For over a century, explorers who first witnessed this shocking spectacle could only guess at its cause. Was it some bizarre mineral deposit or the stain of ancient trapped life? The answer, once uncovered, proved to be more incredible than any simple guess. The blood is water, but water of an utterly alien nature. It originates from a subglacial reservoir, a pocket of brine trapped deep beneath the ice for perhaps as long as 2 million years. This water is hypersaline, so rich in salt that it remains liquid at temperatures far below freezing, and it is loaded with iron leached from the bedrock over eons. When this ancient, iron-rich brine finally finds a fissure to the surface and meets the oxygen in our air, the iron oxidizes instantly, rusting right before your eyes. The waterfall is not a flow of blood, but a breath of ancient rust, a chemical sigh from a world sealed in ice. Solving the color mystery, however, only opened a deeper, more sacred door. That sealed reservoir is not a sterile pocket. It is an ecosystem, a lost world. Scientists drilling into the outflow have discovered a thriving community of microbes living in that darkness, in that cold, in that heavy brine. These organisms do not rely on the sun for energy. They are chemolithiotrophs, a complex name for a simple, revolutionary idea. They survive by processing the iron and sulfur compounds in the rock, essentially eating stone and breathing sulfate instead of oxygen. They have existed in total isolation, following an evolutionary path separate from the rest of the biosphere for millions of years. This transforms Lake Bonny from a geological oddity into a sacred relic. It is a living time capsule from a younger Earth and perhaps a blueprint for life elsewhere. The conditions in that subglacial lake, dark, cold, chemically rich, are strikingly similar to what we suspect exists beneath the icy crusts of moons like Jupiter's Europa or Saturn's Enceladus. The resilient, stone-eating microbes of Blood Falls are a powerful testament to life's tenacity, proving it can flourish in the most hostile, lightless corners a world can offer. The crimson stain is no longer a mystery of color but a beacon. It is a sign that life, once established, clings with incredible ingenuity, and that the most sacred wonders are not always beautiful in a conventional sense, but in their profound, enduring will to exist against impossible odds. The crimson beacon of Blood Falls reveals life in utter darkness, but on the shores of a great lake, a different kind of signal emerges from pure light. Along the eastern coast of Lake Michigan, a wall of sand rises against the sky. These are the Sleeping Bear Dunes, mountains of pale quartz that shift and sigh with the wind. To walk here is to enter a landscape of immense scale and silence until you take a step that makes the earth sing. On certain dry, sunny days, descending a steep dune face can trigger a low, resonant hum. The sand beneath your feet begins to boom, a deep musical note that vibrates through your entire body. This is the phenomenon of singing or booming sands, a rare acoustic event that transforms a simple hillside into a colossal instrument. The science behind this mysterious music lies in the sand itself. These dunes are composed of exceptionally pure, well-sorted quartz grains, worn smooth and round by millennia of wave action along the ancient lake bed. When a layer of these identical spherical grains is disturbed by a slide or a footstep, they begin to avalanche in perfect synchronization. The grains rub against each other, setting up a uniform vibration. The layer of sand beneath acts as a resonator, amplifying that vibration into the sustained, low-frequency hum we hear. It is a perfect alignment of geology and physics, a natural symphony played on grains of sand. But long before physicists understood harmonic resonance, the people who lived here heard a different story in that sound. The Ojibwe legend of the sleeping bear gives these dunes their name and their sacred gravity. The story tells of a mother bear and her two cubs fleeing a great forest fire on the Wisconsin shore. They swam across the vast, cold expanse of Lake Michigan toward safety. The mother bear reached the Michigan shore and climbed onto a high bluff to wait for her cubs. Exhausted, the cubs drowned within sight of land. The mother bear waited and waited until finally the Great Spirit covered the loyal mother with sand to ease her sorrow, creating the massive dune. Her two cubs became the two Manitou Islands that rise from the lake offshore. This is a story of profound loss, fidelity, and transformation. In that context, the low, haunting boom of the singing sands takes on a deeper meaning. It could be heard as the spirit of the land itself, the eternal sigh of the sleeping mother bear, or the mournful echo of the lost cubs carried on the wind. The shoreline was not just a place of physical beauty, but a place of powerful auditory mystery, where the very earth could vocalize its ancient grief and memory. This fusion of natural phenomenon and cultural narrative makes the dunes sacred. The unpredictable nature of the singing sands, requiring just the right dryness and grain alignment, meant that hearing the boom was never guaranteed. It was a gift, a moment of communication from the landscape itself, reinforcing the belief that this was a living, responsive place. A visitor today might experience the booming purely as a fascinating physical event, a trick of friction and vibration. But to stand on that towering dune, looking out over the endless blue of Lake Michigan toward the islands, and to feel the deep hum rise through your feet, is to stand at the intersection of two truths. One is measured in micrometers, the perfect size of a quartz grain. The other is measured in millennia, the enduring power of a story that gives meaning to the wind, the water, and the whispering, singing land. The low hum of singing sands is a whisper compared to the roar the Great Lakes can summon. These vast inland seas, holding 1/5 of the planet's fresh surface water, are not peaceful ponds. They are freshwater oceans with the power to build and break empires, and their bottoms are a forest of shipwrecks, a sacred cemetery stretching for thousands of square miles. Over 10,000 vessels have been lost here, and some of them refuse to stay dead. They sail on as ghost ships, modern legends born from sudden violence and enduring mystery. The most famous phantom is the SS Bannockburn, known as the Flying Dutchman of Lake Superior. In November of 1902, the steel freighter vanished with all 20 hands during a fierce storm. No wreckage was ever found, no lifeboat recovered, but for years afterward, sailors reported seeing her ghostly outline, lights ablaze, battling through the gales near Isle Royale, forever caught in the moment of her disappearance. On Lake Michigan, another Dutchman legend persists. a spectral schooner with tattered sails seen racing ahead of a squall, a warning from the deep to those still living. These stories are not just campfire tales, they are a form of sacred memory, a way for a maritime community to process loss and warn of the lake's capricious power. The lakes do not give up all their secrets easily. Even when a wreck is found, the cause of its demise can remain fiercely debated. No ship embodies this mystery more than the Edmund Fitzgerald. When the giant ore carrier sank in a November gale on Lake Superior in 1975, taking 29 men to the bottom, it was a national trauma. The famous ballad by Gordon Lightfoot etched the event into cultural memory, asking the haunting question, does anyone know where the love of God goes when the waves turn the minutes to hours? The ship was found broken in two, resting 530 feet down. But why did she sink? The official reports point to massive waves flooding her cargo holds through damaged hatch covers. Yet alternative theories persist, each adding a layer to the sacred mystery. Some suggest she was victim to the legendary Three Sisters, a rare sequence of rogue waves where a second and third massive wave hit before a ship can recover from the first. Others argue she scraped a shoal, the infamous 6-fathom shoal, which could have opened her hull to the relentless water. The most poignant theory is that she suffered a catastrophic structural failure, her long hull bending and snapping in the violent seas. The truth likely lies in a combination of these forces, a perfect storm of human error, mechanical stress, and natural fury. The Fitzgerald's resting place is now a protected maritime grave, a site of pilgrimage for divers and historians, and a solemn reminder that these lakes command a reverence akin to any ancient, temperamental god. This transformation of tragedy into sacred space is the true power of the Great Lakes mystery. Every vanished vessel, from the Bannockburn to the Fitzgerald, contributes to the aura. The lakes themselves become living memorials, their sudden, explosive storms, which can whip from calm to catastrophe in minutes, are the breath of this entity. The treacherous shoals hidden just below the surface are its teeth. The dense, cold fog that cloaks everything is its shroud. To work on these waters was to accept a pact with a powerful and unpredictable force. The thousands of wrecks are not merely historical artifacts, they are offerings, the price paid for commerce and connection. Each hull holds a frozen moment, a crew's final struggle, a captain's last decision, a family's shattered future. When we listen to the legend of a ghost ship or stand on a pier feeling the immense, chill wind coming off the water, we are not just hearing a spooky story. We are participating in an ancient human ritual, acknowledging the sacred power of a landscape that gives life and takes it, a depth that holds both our history and our humility. The silent, frozen graves of the Great Lakes speak to a reverence born from fear. But what if that sacred power was not just observed but physically felt within the body? Across continents, many of these hallowed waters share a disturbing trait. They possess the ability to alter human consciousness. This was not a side effect, but perhaps the very reason they were chosen. The quest for a vision, for direct communication with the gods, is a universal human drive, and these lakes offered a chemical or geographical shortcut to that transcendent state. At Lake Titicaca, the spiritual awe is amplified by a very physical force, the thin air. At over 12,000 feet, the body struggles with altitude sickness, which can induce dizziness, euphoria, and vivid, dream-like hallucinations. A pilgrim arriving after a long journey, already in a heightened emotional state, would find their perception dramatically shifted. The brilliant blue of the water, the towering peaks, the dazzling stars, all would be filtered through a brain starved of oxygen. This natural high could easily be interpreted as the presence of the divine, a sign that the sacred gateway was opening. The lake itself, through its mere location, was an active agent in the spiritual experience. Far from the Andes, the toxic breath of Lake Avernus performed a darker, more direct service. The volcanic fumes of carbon dioxide and hydrogen sulfide are not just deadly in high concentrations. In lower doses, they can cause disorientation, confusion, and a detached trance-like state. A priest or oracle preparing to channel the underworld would not have merely stood at the shore symbolically. They might have deliberately inhaled the sacred vapors, allowing the lake's exhalations to blur the line between this world and the next. The Sibyl's prophecies, delivered in a cavern overlooking that deadly water, may have been born as much from neurotoxicity as from divine inspiration. The lake was a pharmacological tool, a means to chemically induce the altered consciousness required to serve as a bridge to the gods. Even the rituals themselves could be designed to trigger transformation. Consider the El Dorado ceremony at Lake Guatavita. The new ruler, covered in gold dust, standing on a raft piled with treasure, was the center of an overwhelming sensory spectacle. The blinding reflection of the sun on gold and water, the rhythmic chanting, the cold shock of the dive into the dark lake, the collective focus of an entire society. This was a recipe for a profound psychological break. For the Zipa, the experience was likely one of ego dissolution, a death and rebirth where he ceased to be a man and emerged as a living sun god. The lake was the crucible for that transformation, its cold water washing away his old identity as the ritual seared a new one into the consciousness of every witness. These examples suggest a radical idea. Our ancestors may have selected these sites not in spite of their dangerous or strange properties, but because of them. A lake that made you see visions, that made your head spin, that forced your body into a survival state, was a lake that was demonstrably alive with power. It proved the presence of the otherworldly by tangibly changing the one thing you thought you knew best, your own mind. The sacredness was not just assigned, it was ingested, inhaled, and felt in the trembling of hands and the racing of the heart. These lakes were more than backdrops for ritual. They were active participants, co-conspirators in humanity's ancient and desperate attempt to reach beyond the veil, using the very chemistry of the earth to bend the limits of perception and touch the divine. But the most profound visions are not always chemical, they are technological. The sacred lakes of the past are now being scanned by the silent eyes of the future. Side-scan sonar paints ghostly portraits of lost cities on computer screens, while autonomous underwater drones glide through lightless depths, their sensors mapping contours invisible to human divers. In laboratories, isotopic analysis of a single bone or a fleck of sediment can now reveal an individual's diet, their birthplace, and the climate of their lifetime, turning a skeleton into a biography. Even from space, satellites measure minute changes in lake temperature and shoreline vegetation, hinting at submerged structures or ancient water levels. We possess tools our ancestors could not have dreamed of, granting us the power to finally answer questions that have lingered for millennia. Yet with this power comes a sacred dilemma of our own. Does the pursuit of knowledge give us the right to disturb these hallowed waters? To drill into a sealed subglacial lake like the one feeding Bloodfalls is to risk contaminating a 2-million-year-old ecosystem. To raise artifacts from the sunken temples of Lake Titicaca or the drowned city in Lake Avernus is to remove them from the context that gives them meaning, potentially severing a spiritual connection that has endured for centuries. Every sonar ping that echoes off a sacred lakebed, every core sample extracted from its mud, is a choice between understanding and intrusion. This tension is reshaping modern exploration. Increasingly, projects are led not just by archaeologists, but in partnership with the indigenous communities for whom these lakes are living ancestors. At Lake Mungo, management is guided by the traditional owners, who ensure that scientific study respects the site as a cemetery first and a research site second. In Siberia, the Buryat people's view of Lake Baikal as a sacred deity informs conservation efforts, framing protection as a spiritual imperative rather than just an environmental one. The greatest mystery moving forward may not be what lies beneath these waters, but how we as a global society choose to approach them. Do we see them as puzzles to be solved or as sanctuaries to be honored? The answer likely lies in a delicate balance, using our technology not as a crowbar to force them open, but as a stethoscope to listen carefully, to learn without violating, and to ensure that the sacred silence of the deep is broken only by a whisper of profound respect. From the high Andes to the Scottish glens, our journey across 25 ancient lakes has traced the contours of human wonder. We have stood on shores where cities vanished beneath the waves and looked into depths said to hold monsters, gods, and gateways to other worlds. Each of these sacred bodies of water, unique in its story, shares a common thread. They are mirrors. They reflect not just the sky above, but the deepest fears, boldest hopes, and most profound questions of the people who lived in their shadow. For our ancestors, water was never just H2O. It was the source of life itself, and therefore the source of ultimate mystery. A lake that could give life could also take it, hide secrets, or reveal the movements of the cosmos. This duality made it sacred. Whether it was gold offered to the depths of Guatavita, a king transformed in its icy waters, or the precise alignment of a temple to catch the solstice light on Titicaca, every ritual was an attempt to converse with that power, to seek favor, knowledge, or simply to understand. Today, science has given us new languages to explain these mysteries. We can map sunken streets with sonar, date bones with isotopes, and understand the chemistry behind a toxic mist or a frozen flame. We have solved countless puzzles, yet something essential remains. The aura, the feeling of standing before Lake Baikal or the silent expanse of Mungo, does not vanish with a geological report. The sacred endures because it lives in the human experience of awe. It is in the chill that runs down your spine when you hear a legend of ghostly bells from a sunken city, or the quiet humility of realizing you are looking at a tool held by someone 40,000 years ago. These lakes remind us that our drive to explore, to question, and to find meaning in the landscape is an ancient, unbroken current. It connects the shaman by the Siberian shore to the scientist lowering a probe into the abyss. We are still looking into the same deep water, asking many of the same questions, simply with different tools. So now we pass the question to you. Of all the mysteries we have explored, from the stone circle in Lake Michigan to the singing sands of Sleeping Bear, which one captured your imagination the most? Do you find yourself drawn to the legends, the archaeological enigmas, or the sheer, breathtaking natural phenomena? Share your favorite lake mystery in the comments below. We would love to hear what resonates with you. If you enjoyed this deep dive into history's hidden waters, be sure to subscribe. There are always more journeys into the unknown waiting just beneath the surface. Thank you for watching.